Well, I'm 81, and as of May 31st, I ceased affiliation with a law firm. So it's the first time in 55 years that I've not been associated with a firm. I hadn't been representing clients for a few years. I didn't trust myself to provide the kind of skillful representation that I thought I was accustomed to delivering clients. Throughout my practice, I had always provided assistance to lawyers who asked for help. And I always did so free of charge. It was tradition in Toledo for lawyers to help each other. And I come from a family of lawyers. I'm third generation. And I just knew it intuitively by the time I was practicing that that's what's done, and I've continued to do it. I do get questions still from lawyers. Typically they're about procedural matters or substantive questions having to do with interpretations of contracts, statutes, constitutions. I'm flattered and delighted that I still have some lawyers who are interested in what I have to say. Well, I became a student at the University of Toledo in 1961, and I took my second degree in 1969, earning 2 degrees over that span of time. Simply put, over that span of 8 years, the University of Toledo shaped the future course of my intellect. I can't think of describing any more profound effect on a person's soul than that, save for the experience of marital love and perhaps religious devotion. Experience in my major, which was philosophy, has been a vivid theme throughout my life. In a word, invigorating in net effect. I had hoped that graduate study in philosophy would continue that, and that's why I enrolled in a PhD program at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. Graduate school was a deflating experience. I didn't like teaching as a graduate student, and I had discovered that it was unlikely that I was going to be another Immanuel Kant or Jean-Paul Sartre or Soren Kierkegaard. So, but I had come from a family of lawyers, as I'm third generation. I observed my grandfather, and much more so my father, and I had formed the impression that both of them were deeply engaged with their profession. I left this grand project of philosophy and went to law school, planning to spend my career with practicing with my father, doing little bits of good for ordinary people, and like him, deriving a great deal of personal satisfaction. Had an office with my father when another law graduate and I opened our own law firm, Cooper Walinski, in a one office that my father had lent to us in his office complex. And we were there 4 months before we moved downtown. So that was the extent of my practice with my father, but the satisfaction is mirrored my father's and what I perceive my grandfather's to have been. I don't know. I am today as surprised about receiving this award as I was when the dean of the law school invited me into her office to inform me that I was to be awarded. I was stunned. I have known personally virtually every one of the previous recipients. All were broadly known in the community. All were broadly renowned. and the overwhelming majority of them practiced here in Toledo in one form or another, whether in private practice and corporate practice, judges, but they were local, they were visible, they were extraordinarily competent and broadly renowned. I didn't have the exposure to Toledo lawyers the way previous recipients have. Few knew of my work in litigation through direct observation. I handled cases periodically in Toledo, but nothing that produced a wide-ranging exposure to other lawyers. I'm baffled, but confused as I am, I'm humbled that the leadership of the College of Law thinks me worthy to stand in line with lawyers of the quality and character who are previous recipients, and perhaps even more so, that my peers in the Law School Alumni Association agree. That's a very difficult question to answer because it's so personal. I'm going to be perfectly candid and tell you about one of the three things of which I'm most proud. Since I was 9 months out of law school, until the last direct representation I had of clients, almost every representation I undertook came my way at the recommendation of another lawyer or because another lawyer hired me to assist. The fact of that recurrent confidence that other lawyers had in my ability to assist is gratifying. One stands out, and it has to do with my years in law school, and specifically with the University of Toledo Law Review. I was the founding editor-in-chief of that publication. I don't know who selected me. The University of Toledo College of Law, like every graduate program everywhere in the country, regardless of discipline, during the mid-'60s to late '60s, had just surge in applicants for the programs. The faculty at the college decided that they were going to demonstrate to the Board of Trustees, as I understand it, that the law school could be a significant, profitable investment beyond what it had been as a night school a few years, for decades until a few years before. Then it became a day school and night school. We were in that first big class, and they decided that class would produce enough kids capable of engaging in the extracurricular activity of law review participation and produce a law review. Now, a law review is significant in legal education, particularly then. I can't speak about it now, but any school that aspired to respectability had to have a law review published. That is, a student-run scholarly journal. We succeeded in putting out 2 publishable issues, respectable issues for our time and place. Even more so, we had gathered enough outside contributed articles and student pieces to publish a 3rd issue for the year. And so, overrunning the budget, we published the 3rd issue and then graduated and got out of there. That's yet another hard question to answer, particularly about law school. Because the principal metamorphosis that occurs in law school doesn't have to do with the acquisition of knowledge, the learning of doctrine on the principal areas, categories of legal analysis: contracts, criminal law, property law, antitrust. You have to learn it. That's what the discussion focuses on. But even more important than that learning is to acquire the ability for a particularly stylized way of thinking. The cliche is learning to think like a lawyer. You have to reason like a lawyer in order to be persuasive. That process of learning occurs pretty quickly, usually within that first year, sometimes longer. But it's a process with which it's hard to associate any one professor as a dominant agent in that evolution. Not so with undergrad. And with undergrad, for me, there was a professor who stands out uniquely, and that was George P. Guthrie, from the philosophy department at the University of Toledo. And I ended up majoring in him. He had a deep effect on me. He had a deep effect on me on selection of graduate schools. I talked to him about 30 years after, and in that conversation, he asked how he influenced me most. And I told him I thought he taught me how to write, because we wrote papers. We didn't have finals. We wrote papers through the semester. We wrote papers for finals. And he said he was surprised and disappointed to hear that, because he thought that he had taught me how to read. And I quickly realized that he was right and I was wrong. I had a piece of advice, but only for lawyers, law students. And that is, don't be so quick to accept the supposed inevitability of legal realism, which is the overwhelmingly dominant legal theory taught in American law schools today, and it has been for decades. Essentially, legal realism says that we all know the judges make up the law. The problem is that when you change the judge, you change the law. And that's where we are today. And it undermines the notion that this is a nation of the rule of law. It lasts only so long as you have the same judge, so long as you believe in legal realism. Well, I'd like to be remembered as one of the many, many good lawyers who took their obligations and demands of our profession seriously. I'd like to be remembered as somebody who strived to give his client his best work every day, and who, every time I was called upon to address a court, I gave the court my most honest assessment of the facts and my best and most accurate reading of the applicable law. I don't see myself as any different from that large majority of lawyers who are doing their best to uphold the traditions of the profession. That's how I'd like to be remembered.